The city of Chicago continues to be a shining example of how not to run a major American city, as Mayor Brandon Johnson continues to drive the city deeper into ruin. Chicago is now staring down its second credit rating downgrade in less than a year, all because of Mayor Brandon Johnson's terrible mismanagement of the city's budget. Instead of fixing the financial mess, Johnson's answer is the same every time. More government dependency, more spending, more bad ideas. And every day, the situation gets worse. Now, the residents of Chicago, especially the Black and Latino communities that he claims he's fighting for, are getting a taste of what progressive taxation looks like. They're opening their mailboxes and seeing the consequences firsthand. As always, the best way you can show your support for the video is by smashing that thumbs up button. That tells me you like the video. And subscribe for more breakdowns like this.
Under a Johnson administration, I'm not raising property taxes.
Well, so I'm not going to raise property taxes. That's been the lazy form of governance for a very long time in the city of Chicago and, quite frankly, around the country. We have to make sure that we're not raising revenue off the backs of working people. And that's why I'm the only candidate who's committed to not raising property taxes.
Communities have been hit hard because the property taxes continue to go up. And that's why I'm committed to making sure that we're not raising property taxes to keep families in the city of Chicago.
So in order to actually fix our economy, we have to eliminate the structural deficit. We get to make up to $1 billion of new investments so that we can save lives, the programs that are needed to do that. And we do it without raising property taxes.
Losing those
surveys from former Chicagoans, why'd you leave? They talk about gas taxes and property taxes and cost of living. As mayor, how are you going to keep from leaving?
Yeah, public safety is still a big deal. And that's what's choking the life out of the city of Chicago, literally and figuratively. That's why I've put forth a budget plan, the only person to do that, where we actually eliminate the debt while increasing our critical investments. And we do all of that without raising property taxes.
We have to make sure that we're keeping everybody here. The greatest population loss right now, the city of Chicago, are black people. Why? Because we have not addressed public safety and property taxes. We just saw what is going on in Little Village and Pilsen. Because property taxes continue to increase, we're losing people, right? And so we have to deal with the structural deficit that Paul Vallis caused, make $1 billion of investments, and we have to do it without raising property taxes. We can do that.
What you just heard right there was Mayor Brandon Johnson before he was elected, speaking passionately about not raising property taxes on Chicago residents. Yet, once he was elected mayor, one of the very first things he attempted to do was, yes, raise property taxes. If it wasn't for the city council unanimously rejecting Mayor Johnson's proposed $300 million property tax hike, he would have got what he wanted. Now, why would anybody in the city of Chicago believe that a progressive Democrat like Brandon Johnson would not look to raise property taxes in order to fund all these government programs that he wants to push is beyond me. But now people are realizing they were sold a false bill of goods.
Afternoon, Mayor Brandon Johnson spent over 3 minutes defending his 2026 budget plan.
Even though there's a warning, it could lead to the city's credit being downgraded. Tia's back to explain why the mayor says the rich should pay more. Tia.
That's exactly what he said, and he was very candid about what he had to say. Earlier this year, Chicago's credit rating was knocked down a notch, a signal to investors that the city may struggle to meet its financial obligations. The mayor says that's exactly why he's pushing for new progressive revenue sources and says financial problems already existed well before he took office.
Securing revenue from areas where our economy is shifting, which the social media tax is one of those areas that I believe that will ensure that we generate more progressive revenue to deal with the structural damage that I inherited.
Mayor Brandon Johnson is defending his more than $16 billion budget plan, even as analysts warn it could put Chicago's credit rating at risk. The mayor is pushing a first-of-its-kind social media tax, part of several new revenue proposals aimed at what he calls, quote, fairness. That includes a community safety surcharge, a $21 per month head tax on large employers, and higher fees on cloud-based services. Critics say those measures could drive jobs and innovation right out of the city of Chicago, calling it a move that could make the city less competitive. Johnson insists, though, the plan is about long-term stability, not short-term pain, saying he inherited a broken system and this budget is the moment of truth for fixing it. And he won't balance the budget shortfalls on the backs of the poor.
You're asking me to go before city council and defend the very people that have made an enormous amount of revenue over the course of decades off the backs of working and poor people. What are we debating here? What are we debating here? We're either going to challenge those with means who have made hundreds of billions of dollars, unprecedented revenue at a time in which families are struggling to pay for college, to pay for groceries, to afford rent, mortgage. I'm going to defend and stand up for working people through it all.
Wonder what the residents of Chicago's West and South Side neighborhoods are saying about Brandon Johnson's claims that he's looking out for them, as homeowners on the South and West side of the city brace for massive property tax hikes. And why is this happening? Because the assessment on their homes are suddenly skyrocketing. And those assessments are handled by who? Ding, 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 ding. You guessed it. Democrats who were elected to determine property values. And now Johnson was unsuccessful in raising property taxes in 2024 thanks to the city council striking him down. And so if you're someone who just believes in simple coincidences, you might shrug this off, but me, not so much. You know, I have my suspicions because when property values magically get reassessed at higher levels, the end result is the same. The city collects more tax revenue without Johnson having to put his name on a tax hike. Coincidence? Maybe. Convenient? Absolutely. But that's just my speculation and a little common sense.
Well, people have gathered here tonight at Harmony Community Church here in Lawndale as they're trying to light the way to fairness with this bonfire and discussion tonight. Many homeowners across Chicago receiving a hefty property tax increase in the mail, and they're all wondering where that money is going.
How can you maintain your home if your taxes are constantly going up?
Homeowners in Lawndale are searching for answers together tonight about their property tax hikes. Community leaders partnered with the Lawndale Christian Development Corporation to host this bonfire, allowing neighbors to discuss their options. One man says he received a bill this week that was $977 more than what he paid last year.
Tax increase is tied to a TIF that I have no idea why. Ogden-Pulaski TIF is collecting money from our neighbors in our streets, but we're not being notified for what or why it's in the bill.
The group discussed a number of solutions for the issue, including an effort to propose new policy, which would be modeled after California's Prop 13. That would limit property taxes to 1% of assessed value, with annual increases capped at 2%. Homeowners are also frustrated because they feel like they're not seeing the tax hikes lead to notable investment in their neighborhoods.
There's been a divestment in this community for the most part, but it seems like now that people have found an interest in reclaiming the neighborhood, now it's like we're being taxed for prosperity.
Cook County Treasurer Maria Pappas also spoke earlier today on the tax bills while at a Rainbow Push event. She says there are new avenues for homeowners to pay these bills at their own pace.
You do not have to pay your bill on December 15th. Did you hear that? You don't have to pay it. Let me tell you why. We went to Springfield last year and set up a payment plan.
Pappas says you could go online on December 16th and find payment plans for up to 13 months. That's welcome news to these homeowners, but they still want some clarity on those tax hikes.
We understand utilities are going up and things of that nature, but it's a valuation issue. Like we don't have schools we need, those economics that aren't here, but we're being charged to pay for economics in other people's communities.
Now, some people here tell us they haven't even received their property tax bills yet, but we are told that those are going out around Chicago throughout this week.
Common sense tells you this. If you're paying more taxes in your city, you expect to see results on some level. Otherwise, people are going to start asking the obvious question. Where's the money going? Now, Brandon Johnson loves to speak passionately about the so-called investments he's bringing supposedly into Chicago's urban communities, but nothing on the ground level reflect that in these communities. And at this point, I'm not breaking any news that's not already known by saying where the money is actually going. Anyone who isn't deliberately looking the other way can see it. It's being redirected the other way to fund illegal immigrants. Johnson can talk in circles all he wants, but that's the reality. And now, instead of fixing the problem, he wants to squeeze Chicago businesses for even more with this corporate head tax. But there are those inside Chicago City Council that are speaking out. Take a listen.
The alderman is warning Mayor Brandon Johnson that he is moving just way too fast with his 2026 budget.
Political reporter Paris Schutz is live outside City Hall. Paris.
Yeah, Terrence and Tia, the mayor making no bones about it. He believes it is time to vote on this $16.7 billion budget ASAP. The time for deliberation is over. The time for negotiation is over. It's time for a thumbs up or a thumbs down. But several aldermen are saying, hold up, things are going much too quickly.
I think he should put the brakes on this train. I mean, we're basically hurtling down the tracks without having fully vetted this budget. We haven't seen all the efficiencies and cuts that are required. There's other opportunities through revenue that don't hit everyday taxpayers. Those all have to be on the table, and I think he just needs to slow down. If you look at the schedule, he's going way too fast.
A Second Ward Alderman Brian Hopkins is questioning the timing as folks will be hearing about these higher taxes just as their second installment Cook County property tax bills arrive in the mail.
But that's going to create the kind of atmosphere that will make it difficult for this mayor to pass a budget that doesn't include any cuts and efficiencies. People will open their tax bill and they'll get angry and they'll call their elected official and they'll say, what's going on here? Why did my bills go up? They don't want to hear that elected official say, well, you know, we're going to tax you even more this year, but don't worry about it. That's a very hard sell in an anti-tax environment like we're faced with right now.
And so there you had that. And so now Chicago is staring down its second credit rating downgrade in less than a year, all because Brandon Johnson's terrible mismanagement of the city's budget. And somehow Johnson still wants you to trust the process. That somehow he knows what he's doing. But every sign seems to be pointing in the opposite direction. What he's doing isn't solving the problem. Matter of fact, what he's doing is creating an even bigger disaster for the city of Chicago. Take a listen.
And there's some new concerns for Chicago's finances. A new warning from a ratings agency has come out.
So what they did is they revised Chicago's outlook from stable to negative. Mayor Johnson, though, still defending his more than $16 billion budget. Several aldermen, though, say more cuts are needed.
So for more on this and reaction from City Hall, we've got our political reporter, Marianne Ahern. This is quite a move. It's never a good thing to have your rating shot.
No, there's a lot going on there. Yes, aldermen say this outlook downgrade is a warning, and they fear an actual credit downgrade is coming without major changes to the mayor's budget. Underway right now, budget hearings at City Hall, and there has been pushback to the mayor's $21 per employee per month corporate head tax. It is for larger companies. However, the mayor sees the results of the elections on Tuesday, especially in New York City, as proof that voters do approve bold ideas. Several Chicago aldermen disagree, though, with the mayor's assessment.
As much attention as we're getting around the corporate head tax, I have to be just brutally honest here. It is absolutely frustrating at a time in which people are crying out desperately for government to respond to the basic fundamentals. And we are in a moment where there are more billionaires. We're close to having a trillionaire, maybe a couple of them. And people are asking about 1/3% to keep people safe.
And so Brandon Johnson is whining because people don't see things the way he does, and they're pushing back on his ridiculous agenda, especially with that corporate head tax. Johnson seems to think it's no big deal to tax businesses even more than they're already taxed, simply because basically they got it like that. They can afford it, so why not? That's really what he's saying. Take more from the people who create the jobs, invest in the city, and build economic infrastructure Chicago depends on, and funnel it back into the government programs that he wants to fund. Instead of incentivizing investment, growth, and opportunity, he wants to punish success. It's truly amazing how people like Brandon Johnson get elected to powerful positions while being completely clueless on how an economy actually works. And so when members of Chicago City Council held an emergency meeting to examine a report on how to close a $1 billion budget deficit, a report put together by an outside auditor, not Johnson's inner circle, the findings left Johnson fuming. Take a listen.
Well, the city council is holding an emergency hearing right now.
Political reporter Paris Schutz is live at City Hall. Paris, what's this hearing all about?
Yeah, Terrence and Sylvia, city council members are giving the mayor's budget team a grilling on an outside report that the city spent $3 million on to come in and make recommendations on how to save money out of this massive $16.7 billion budget. So Ernst & Young, they did the report. They came up with as much as $1.4 billion in savings. And these alders want to know, well, how come the mayor isn't incorporating the majority of this into his budget that attempts to close a $1.15 billion gap? Now, the mayor said that's just one of many considerations that he has to take in.
I just hope that they spend, the same amount of time in this EY report also looking at how corporate interests are continuing to get away with without having to pay their fair share in taxes. I think all of it requires our attention at this time.
So this report done by Ernst & Young, thus the slang EY, it recommends things like consolidating city real estate, some of the fleet of city vehicles, consolidating the way the city doles out contracts, and then $100 million in savings by having city employees pay more toward their health coverage. But alders are complaining that only about 80 million of these ideas and recommendations was included in the mayor's budget proposal, along with a proposed employee head tax, social media tax, and other revenue generators. Council members like the 19th Ward's Matt O'Shea says it doesn't sound like the majority of alders want to go along with these taxes.
We've been very clear. We want to see more cuts. We want to see more efficiencies. We know we can't cut our way out of this, but before we talk about higher taxes, higher fees, we need to identify cuts and efficiencies, and this current proposal the mayor's put forth doesn't include enough.
So this meeting is expected to go late into the evening, and it was $3 million the city paid for Ernst & Young to come do this report. Now, the budget director for the city is defending why they're not including more of this, saying these are long-term recommendations. You can't necessarily see all these savings in 1 year's budget cycle, but alders say, we're not buying it. There's more answers that we need to get. It's just all part of these budget back and forth negotiations that will be happening until the end of the year. Sylvia and Terrence.
All right, Paris, thank you.
So yeah, the city of Chicago looks like it's headed for a disaster if Brandon Johnson doesn't change some things in this budget that he's proposing, as Chicago's facing another credit rating downgrade. But let me bring this up right here as it kind of explains how this affects Chicago as a city for the present and, more importantly, going into the future. And so real quick, the reason why a city's credit rating is so important is because of city municipal bonds. Now, we're talking about people who have a lot of money, enough to invest in cities on a large scale. These city municipal bonds are debt securities issued by the cities to raise money for major public projects, things like infrastructure, transportation, schools, utilities, and community development. When investors buy these bonds, they're essentially loaning money to the city. In return, the city pays them interest over time and repays the principal when the bond matures. These bonds are especially attractive to investors because the interest they earn is often exempt from federal, state, and local taxes, which means cities can borrow money at lower rates than most other borrowers. And the city's credit rating plays a huge role in this process. A higher credit rating signals lower risk, making it easier for the city to attract investors at lower interest rates. But when a city gets downgraded, the opposite happens. Borrowing becomes more expensive. Fewer investors are interested, and the cost of funding basic city projects skyrocket. And so, yes, when you have a city like Chicago that is already dealing with a major deficit, a mayor like Brandon Johnson that doesn't want to cut anything, he just wants to keep on adding and taking from those who make the money in order to help fund these projects, that becomes less and less attractive for investors. The very people who are responsible for the business structure of a city like Chicago. Chicago residents are just finding out the hard way. They continue to elect the same kind of official. The person may change, but the ideology remains the same in these blue cities like Chicago that are crumbling further and further in disaster. And until the residents actually decide to change their mindset with who they elect to represent them, it'll be more of the same. But now I want to hear from you. Drop your comments down below. As always, best way you can show your support and that you enjoy the content is by smashing that thumbs up. That tells me you like the video, and subscribe for more breakdowns like this. And as always, until next time.